It's April. I've got my bushcraft gear with me. I'm bushcrafting in April.
If you enjoy watching this video and think that you'd like to see more from my channel, then click on that subscribe button and the notification bell and you won't miss out on any future updates from my channel. Cheers.
Hi folks, I'm Evie Taylor and as always, a huge thank you for joining me.
Whoa, off you go. Hi folks, I'm Craig Taylor and as always, a huge thanks for joining me here on my YouTube channel, The Bushcraft Padawan. If you're a regular viewer or subscriber, you'll know that I like to get out for at least one full day or a day and a night every month in order to get outside and practice some new skills and refine some old skills, and April is no exception. I always like to come out with a list of things that I want to accomplish, I want to try out in mind rather than just bumbling around and see what happens. Lined up for April, this is what I've got. I would like to try hanging a new hammock that I've bought. I can't quite call it my first ever hammock hang because I have hung a hammock before about 24 years ago. So actually I am going to call it my first ever hammock hang. I want to try that out. I want to revisit the Gypsy well that I dug just a few meters in that direction in one of my last videos. I'm linking to that in the top right hand corner of the screen. I want to see how that water has settled. I want to get a brew on today using some filtered water from that Gypsy well through my brown bag coarse water filter. And what else did I want to? I also wanted to have a little look at some knife maintenance today as well. I've been using my knife a lot of late. I've been cleaning it, I've been oiling it. Just want to have a check of that edge and just see if it needs a strop or if it needs perhaps a little light touch up. As you've probably already detected though, apart from Willow the dog, I'm not out here on my own today. I do have a little woodland helper with me, and here she is. So she's already introduced herself, but just a reminder, this is
Evie Taylor.
And it's not only me that wants to get a few things that have been in the woods today, you do as well, don't you? So
yeah.
Tell everybody what it is you want to have a try today.
The first thing I want to do is set up a hammock like you said.
So a hammock, she's actually brought her own hammock out with her. I've brought out one that I've bought, I'll talk about that later in the video. But we actually made a hammock some time ago out of an old bed sheet and some cordage that I've got. So you want to give that a try, don't you?
Yeah.
Once you've got your hammock up, what do you want to do in it?
In it, 'cause I bring my book, I want to read some of my book in it.
Evie's always got a head in a book. Unsurprisingly, she's brought one with her today, so she's going to lie in a hammock and read a book. What a great way to spend a day of your half-term holidays. And what else?
The other thing is make a hot chocolate in the flask.
In the flask?
Yeah.
In the metal cup?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Evie wants to make a hot chocolate, which very nicely ties in with what I want to do today, which is to make that hot chocolate from the filtered, from the Gypsy well through the coarse bag. So I've got things lined up, Evie's got things lined up. Without further ado, let's get on with the day. Here's the very homemade hammock here. It's just a double sheet, and I think we folded it lengthways in half and then in half again, so you could almost say it's four layered. At the ends, I doubled the material back on itself, put in a few wraps, tied it off, and there's some cordage there. Very heavy, very bulky, but for the kids playing out and just enjoying themselves in the woods for a day where I don't really have to walk very far with it, you can see there's a lot of bulk to it there. Also probably not very environmentally friendly from a tree perspective because of it's rope that I'm putting around the tree and not a tape. So I feel kind of bad about that, but Evie weighs next to nothing, so I'm not overly concerned, I'm not overly concerned of the amount of stress it's going to put on the tree because there's nothing to her. So let's get this set up and let's get the young lady in the lap of luxury that she deserves. The daughter I'm talking about, not the dog. So Evie, how are you getting on?
Good, it's really comfy.
Do you think you could sleep in it?
Yeah.
Well, you won't be tonight, but maybe we'll do it some other point, yeah?
Yeah.
Good stuff. I've not hung you very high off the floor because if I've got this all wrong and it comes crashing down, I don't want you to fall very far. But you're comfy.
Yeah.
That's the main thing.
And I like swinging in it.
Right, so you've ticked off two of the things you wanted to do today already. You're reading a book and you're in a hammock.
Yeah.
Does that mean you're going to leave me alone for the rest of the day now?
Kind of.
Okay. Back to your book. I'm now going to turn my attention to my tarp setup, my first time hammock hang. I mentioned in one of my previous Thursday Thought videos, I'm linking to it in the top right hand of the corner of the screen now, that I've never been a big hammocker. A, because I've never really needed to, and I've never really wanted to because of all the extra faff that seems to go with it. Since I recorded that video only a week or two ago, I've done far more research into hammocks, and it's an even deeper, wider kit black hole than I thought when I recorded the video. There's so many things that you could use to set up and create your hammock system. That's one of the things that's always put me off in the past. But like I said in that Thursday Thought video, I thought it was time to give it a try. The hammock that I've chosen isn't a branded name. It's actually a guy that I saw was selling his homemade hammocks on eBay. He was using ex-military parachute silk, so immediately that kind of hooked me and that resonated with me. The guy seems to know what he's talking about. He'd incorporated lots of modifications to this. It wasn't just a length of material bounded at the end. He'd used he'd used a fixed ridge line, which according to my reading is a good thing. It helps both from an admin perspective and also an equal hang perspective. You'll see that in a few minutes. He'd incorporated some extra mods around the edges of the hammock to cinch things in. Again, you'll see that later on in the video. And the way he'd created the tie out loops, I think they're called, at either end, again reflected what seems to be accepted good practice in the hammocking community. So I thought to myself, you know what, rather than put my hand very deep into my pocket for a hammock, why don't I give this guy a try? He's British based, he's a UK manufacturer. It looks like he's trying to set up his own little business, his own little cottage industry, and I thought to myself, you know, there's a benefit to me from trying it out, there's a benefit to him from buying one of his prototypes, so I thought I'd buy one of his. The other thing that attracted, in fact no, it wasn't a thing that attracted me. I made an assumption about the size of it, then I received it through the post and was gobsmacked by just how small this hammock was. Let me give you an insight into it. This pouch here, the one that I've got my hand on, the one that you can see in shot there, within that I've got my hammock. You've seen a previous video where I talk about my fast stow and fast deployment tarp. So my tarp is in here, the ridge line, a couple of makeshift pegs, the guy line, and my new hammock is all in this pouch here. So I've got an incredibly compact sleeping / shelter system all in that external pouch. Let me give you an idea about the compact size of the hammock itself. Take those carabiners out. I may need those later. I'm hoping not to, but I may. Here's the hammock. That's the size of the hammock. Now, when I stow it in that pouch, I'm able to really compress it down, so already now it's starting to balloon up in size. If I just give you an idea, there's my hand. There's the hammock there. You know, I can literally fit it in the palm of my hand. It is smaller than an Nalgene bottle, without doubt, when it's compressed down. So that was, yeah, I knew it would be compact when I bought it because it's parachute silk. I didn't realise quite how compact I could get it once I really put some pressure on it. And as you can see in that shot I've just shown you there, it stows together very nicely along with all of my shelter system in that external pouch. So it came in its own little Parasilk storage bag, and then within there is the harp. I keep calling it a harp. I guess that's a combination of a hammock and a tarp, isn't it? There's the hammock there along with the ridge line and the tie-up points, etc., which I'm now going to start experimenting with. So that's the hammock part of the hammock system. But according to my reading, you also, of course, need to attach the hammock to the trees that you're suspending it from. Apparently paracord is no good for several reasons. One, over long term it can do damage to the tree because it's a very, very narrow diameter and your weight is being pulled into the tree, so I'm keen to avoid that. And secondly, of course, paracord stretches. There is an element of give to it, which, having been under a parachute a number of times, is a good thing. It's good that it gives and doesn't transfer all the shock when a parachute deploys to your body. So there's an element of give, and I've read people saying that, you know, overnight they'd sling their hammocks, they'd hang their hammocks as they wanted them, and by morning their backside was touching the ground. Not because anything had snapped, not because anything had ripped, but because the paracord had stretched and they were on the ground. So I'm keen to avoid that. This is what I've come up with to try and avoid it. Sticking with the parachute theme, I've got some of this tape, which is used in the manufacture of parachutes. It's actually a hollow tape. If I try and open the end out there, I hope you can see that it's almost like tubular tape. I guess it's like a bit like tubey grip. That's probably the closest thing I could imagine you could get to. I think in the US they call this type of thing mule tape. I also believe that electricians and people who work a lot with wiring and cabling use something very similar. But it's about finger thickness or thereabouts. It's flat, so again, from a transferring of the of your weight into the tree, hopefully it distributes that over the length of the tree, and it's relatively, if not completely, non-stretch. So hopefully when I hang it, there shouldn't be any overnight droop. Sounds like I've got a medical condition, doesn't it? Hopefully there shouldn't be any stretch of the cordage of this overnight, resulting in my tap sagging during the night. I've got a massive amount of this, I think 10 to 15 metres or something like that. What I need to figure out now, and I'm going to try and capture on camera, is just how I want to cut this. It's a single length. My gut tells me to just cut it in half and then come up with some form of system to be able to loop it round the tree, to be able to tie overhand knots in it. So I'm almost creating something I used to do a lot of climbing, and I've got lots of sort of stuff at home. Daisy chains, from a climbing perspective, they're known as daisy chains, but put lots of overhand knots in, create these loops for me to hook the carabiners into. I'm going to stop waffling to camera. I'm actually going to get on with trying this stuff out. So be a fly on the wall, if you like, and see how I get on with my very first DIY hammock setup. So I'm just going to find the midpoint of this tape. There we go, good enough for government work. My assistant here is going to do the slicing, so I'm going to move my hands well out the way. Right, then if you take the knife, Evie, if you put the knife in there, hold it closer to the blade, that's it, and then just, that's it. Perfect. Now if you give me the knife to the back, that's it. Thank you. Nice one. We've all still got our fingers.
Yeah.
Result, yeah?
Yeah.
I now have two quite long, equal lengths of tape. I want to make those single strands of tape into a loop, so I've just taken the ends. I'm going to tie a simple overhand knot in them, a good 6 inches or so from the ends to allow for any slippage. There's the ends tied, and of course if you tie two ends of a piece of cordage, you end up with a loop. So I've looped that now around the tree, as you can see, lights footed it around the tree, but I've realised that the weak point in all of this is where my carabiner, my hand, is going to be, which is exactly why I tied the knots. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to adjust this whole setup by slipping this knot perhaps back a foot or so, so that when I do put the carabiner here, it's not on the weakest part of the entire setup. I'm going to slip this knot slightly further back. Now hopefully you can see my dangly bits. Matron. You can see those there. Where my hand is now is no longer on the weak part of this setup. So the theory goes. I'm now going to repeat that whole process for the other half of the tape for the other tree. Overhand knot, a decent 6 inches at the end, just in case. And there we have it, again making sure that the weak part of the setup, which is where the overhand knot is back from where the carabiner's going to hook in. I suspect what I'm going to have to do is to put some more overhand knots in this, maybe another 1 or 2, to give me an element of adjustment with my hammock swing. Because at the moment, the only place I can hook that carabiner in is here, where my thumb is, where my hand is. What if that's too low? What if I need to raise it up a little bit? I've got nowhere to go with this, so just putting an overhand knot in gives me another attachment point. You can see just behind me over my left and right shoulder, those 2 trees. You can see the tape around the trees. I've just turned my attention now to the hammock itself, and it's interesting, although I've never, I keep saying I've never hung a hammock. Yes, I have, but let's pretend I haven't, because it was a 1/4 century ago. Although I've never hung a hammock before, it's interesting that some of the stuff and practices and approaches that I've employed for other things, I've automatically, without realising it, put into play for this already. I took this hammock out at home to have a look at it in the lounge, all excited like a child. When I stowed it away, I made sure that the tie-out loops, or the hanging loops, whatever you call these things here, were at the top of the bag. Just like when I stow my tarp away, you saw me link to my rapid tarp setup video earlier on. When I stow my tarp away, I make sure that my ridgeline hanks of cordage are at the top, so I can reach in, grab those, and can immediately start setting up. I'm not hunting around for the loops. Same detail with this, same practice with this. I've made sure that they are stowed at the top, so I can reach in. And the 2 things that I need to work with first of all are the first 2 things that I discover in this hammock bag here. I mentioned a couple of carabiners earlier on in my video. I've seen a lot of hammockers walk out the door with carabiners. These are climbing carabiners. I used to do an awesome amount of climbing in my younger day. These are climbing rated carabiners, 24 kilonewton wire gates. In 24 kilonewtons in that direction there, they are perfectly capable, assuming that I don't do something silly and like hang off the wire gate itself. They're perfectly suitable for hammocking, more than sufficient. I didn't really want to bring these. What I'm trying to do is to set up a hammock system that takes the least possible amount of kit. I think the setup I've got at the moment with these is the minimum. What I'd quite like to do is to, even over time, evolve the system and involve my own understanding of hammocking to actually get rid of these as well. There are ways of doing it. I've seen people use marlin spike hitches with a toggle throw. Again, you'd need to bring a toggle out, but of course you could fashion a toggle from what you've got outdoors. But for today, to start things off and make life easy for myself to begin with, I am going to rely on these carabiners I've brought with me. Well, that was nice and quick. If you cut out all the waffle of me prattling on about how little I know about hammocks, that was incredibly quick. Some immediate things spring to mind. The angle between the end of my hammock and the white tape, from what I've read, it's about 30 degrees is a good angle. There is no way that that is 30 degrees, not in anybody's geometry book. There's no give. There's no give at all. I couldn't, if that tree had been a foot further that way, or that tree had been a foot further that way, I wouldn't have got it to work. It's only just clipped in. So I'm thinking a few things here. I can't make the hammock any longer. I can't make the carabiners any longer. I can't move the trees closer together. But what I could do is I could take one of those doubled over loops of tape, and instead of doubling the whole thing over and losing 50% of the length of it, I could tie an overhand knot in one end, lasso that round the tree, giving myself almost twice as much tape at one end. Wouldn't need to do it at both ends, just at one end. I'm going to give that a try. I also think this hammock, for me, as a newbie, is probably a little high off the ground. Without wishing to sound like a chicken, I would probably want to give it an hour or two of laying in it before I elevate it any higher. So I want to have it probably within a foot of the ground, just on the off chance I balls all of this up, which, let's be honest, is a fairly good odds that I have at the moment. So I'm going to lower it slightly, which of course just means me shuffling these parachute tape down the tree, but also want to give myself a better hang angle. Let's give that a try. I've just put into practice what I was just waffling about then. So what I've done now is I've stripped the whole tape off from one tree. It's no longer doubled in a loop now, it's a single lengthy strand. I tied an overhand knot in one end there, and I fed it through. I basically lassoed the tree, I guess you could say. So that's my fixed point. Again, I've left a good tail after the overhand loop, just in case. And then following this single strand of tape down, I've tied a figure of 8 knot on the bite into there. Another figure of 8 on the bite, and another figure of 8 on the bite. The reason I've tied a figure of 8 knot is because from my climbing experience, I know that even when it has been put under massive load, in other words, loads of pressure pulled on it, pulled mega tight, a figure of 8 is one of the, if not the easiest knot to undo once it's been placed under load. And of course, once I've slept on this or laid on this, gave the game away then, for a little while, it will have been placed under load. These will have been pulled tight. If I ever need to undo them, which I probably would do for stowing them away, then a figure of 8 would be a good option to allow me to be able to untie them easily, possibly with cold fingers, possibly with some reduced manual dexterity because of the cold. Figure of 8 is the way to go, and that's what I've tied overhand. Hopefully now you can see I now have 3 places that I can put the carabiner in, and not just one. I've also got a heck of a lot more tape dangling to the ground to allow me to be able to vary the angle, that looking for that 30-degree, as they say, angle between the tie-out point and the tape running up to the tree. So that's what I've come up with so far. I'm going to hook the carabiner back in, going to give you the same sort of shot that I gave you before and see how things have changed, hopefully. You may not be able to pick this up on camera, but there's a couple of things immediately obvious to me. The hammock is now lower to the ground, which is a big relief. I also had to pull the hammock a lot less to get this hooked in here. Now, I can barely struggle to get this carabiner hooked into the second one. Crikey. Yeah, I've just managed it, but you'll notice that the angle here now is almost, you know, it's almost flat, it's almost parallel to the ground. I don't want that, so I'm going to drop it there, a much shallower angle now, but I've got nowhere to go. This loose end that you can see here has no more overhand knots in it, so I guess what I've learnt here is these 2 knots, the top 2 knots, pretty much redundant. I shall probably place some knots, which I'm going to do, some figure of 8 on the bites further down this loose end here, this tail end here, because those top 2 are useless. I'm not going to do the same thing at the other end. I'll do one thing at a time. I'll lay in it, see how that pans out. So for now, I'm going to tie a few more figure of 8 on the bite knots into this. Here I am. My daughter stood behind the camera going, "Dad," with a very worried look on her face. What could possibly go wrong? I'm clearly an expert in this. I've been doing it for 15, 20 minutes.
You sure?
So let's have a sit in it first.
going to break it.
Okay, I may as well just sit on the ground because because that's stretched far. Here we go, look at me sitting on the ground. So what do I need to do here? I need to raise the slings further up the tree and therefore bring everything back up off the ground. Second time lucky. Okay, I'm now technically off the ground. I can hear pinging out of my right ear. I'm guessing that's just the knots tightening up, twigs perhaps snapping from the tree where it's just the tape has constricted some twigs. But I'm technically off the ground. Am I technically hammocking? Hammockers out there, the hammocking community watching this, am I now technically hammocking, albeit by about 1/8 of an inch off the ground? Have I erred on the side of caution too much? Well, I am off the ground. I'm swinging, therefore I can't be in contact with the ground. It's official, folks. I am a seasoned hammocker. Look at me. So this is good. I'm happy with this. I'm quite happy that it's also this far off the ground as well for now. Let's do the real trick now, which is to swivel myself round so I'm not sat doing 8 hours of V-sits. Clearly my abs don't need that. Let me swivel myself round and get myself in here.
Put your legs up.
Joined by the dog. You still there? So this feels a bit odd. It feels like it's rising up a lot here. Maybe it's the way I'm laid in it.
That's because you need to put your feet in the middle.
Ah, my daughter said you need to put your feet in the middle, but actually from what I've seen of people hammocking, laying across the hammock rather than in line with the hammock, almost laying across the ridgeline is the right thing to do for a better hang. Certainly this seems to be the traditional way I see people hammocking, but then you get the this ridge in the middle which I've read about here under your calves, so I see a lot of people talking about laying this way.
So that the sun won't...
Back again. I've got to admit, it doesn't feel comfortable. I don't know if it looks comfortable, it doesn't feel it. I'm going to experiment some more off camera because I don't want to keep dragging you along with every adjustment that I make, but I'm going to experiment a little more with shuffling a few things around. I'm very mindful that my head is quite far from that end, but my feet are very close to that end, so maybe I need to shuffle myself further up or adjust the hang so that actually when I sit in it, my body is more evenly distributed. I feel like I'm all pushed up one end, the foot end, and not the head end. So that's going to be the first thing that I try. But I'm going to close the camera down now. I'm going to do a lot of work off camera. My daughter's also whinging that she wants her lunch.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do a lot of work off camera, and then I'll come back once I've fine-tuned it and let you know what it is that I've fine-tuned, if I can keep the dog off it. See you soon.
Can I have a go in it?
He's there. Not up here, up here. Just put yourself in.
Finished
Okay.
Yeah.
Here I am back at the Gypsy well that I dug in one of my more recent videos. Again, I'll link to it in the top right hand corner of the screen. I've got with me a drenched brown bag that I've just soaked, submerged, wrung out, soaked, submerged again in some dirty water close by. I've come back to this. This has dropped significantly. I'd say there's probably at least 50% less volume in this, and also I can see where the water was pouring in last time and it's not now. So I'm guessing the water level has naturally dropped. Just in the week, 10 days since I was last here, the general water table level has dropped. There has been little or no rain in that time, to be perfectly honest, so that's kind of understandable. The water looks a damn sight clearer than it did when it was full up. Clearly letting it settle and stand has been a good thing. Uh-oh, Willow's just arrived and I'm looking at a muddy puddle in the ground, so she may well get involved. what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my metal mug, I'm going to fill this brown bag up to the fill line. I'm hoping there's enough water in there. I'm not 100%, and then we'll allow this to start running off and make ourselves a hot chocolate. Leave it. Go away. A couple of leaves and pine needles have found their way in, so I'm taking those out. I want to minimise as much debris, of course, in this brown bag as I possibly can. Because as I've discovered in the past, the more debris goes in here, it takes a damn sight longer for the water to filter through the debris. That bag is now filled up to the top. I'm going to walk it back over to the camp area, let it run off to the safe runoff line, and then we can start collecting it ready to boil it. Let's make our way back. Enjoying that, Evie?
Yeah.
Nice and tasty?
Yeah.
What about the company?
Don't really like this company.
Yeah.
Keeps on snorting all the time.
A little bit in your face, isn't she?
Yeah.
Oh yes, this is the life. Since I last joined you for hammock related chat earlier on in the video, I've tinkered around with this, but only a little. I have now extended the other end, the head end, that tape that's there, that's now a single strand. I've toyed around at that end, head end again, with putting in the figure of 8 on a bite knot to allow me to have a greater degree of flexibility with where those carabiners hook in. It feels comfortable, you know. I'm laid here, I'm swinging. It's more comfortable than sitting on the ground. It's more comfortable than sitting or it's more comfortable than laying on the ground. It's more comfortable than just sitting up against a tree. I like it, it's comfortable. I'm gonna withhold judgment about its comfort until I've slept in it, because I think that's the key thing. It is rare that I would bring this out just to sit in it for the day, although the sun's come out now and I do quite fancy the idea of just laying in this on a summer's day and turning myself into a crispy lizard laid out in the sun. I think most of the time it's going to be for sleeping, so I'm going to withhold judgment on its comfort until I have spent a night in it, until I've spent a night in it in a sleeping bag, until I've spent a night in it in a sleeping bag, possibly with my roll mat underneath me. A lot of people in the hammock community talk about these underquilts, and they've always seemed like a bit of a really what is that all about? But even today, on a relatively, it's a cool / mild spring day. Even today, I can feel across my backside and the small of my back, it is significantly cooler than anywhere else on my body. And I can imagine at night when the temperature drops anyway, when I'm less, when I'm generating less energy and heat as it is, I can certainly imagine the skin that's in contact with this hammock material feeling quite cool. So I understand where people are coming from with these underquilt things, or these underquilt blanket things, but I'm still kind of wedded to the idea of trying to make the best use of what I carry anyway, which would be sleeping bag, bivvy bag, roll mat. It'd be interesting to see how that plays out when I'm cocooned in this hammock. You may notice here, and to a lesser degree here, there's some shock cord running across a couple of feet on this end of the hammock, the foot end, if you like, the way I'm laid, and at the opposite side, at the head end of the hammock. And what this is for, although I've not quite fathomed out what the value add of it is, although I guess I've seen the value add on YouTube, I've not experienced it myself, is when you lay in a hammock, you naturally put tension in some areas and not others. So where my head is tight. Where my feet are, I'm pulling the material taut, which means that this material here and this material here, the opposites, they're not taut. They're slack, and I believe that can lead on occasions to whatever you're laying in, whether you've got a quilt over you, dropping over the side. So the purpose of these things, I think they've got a certain name. I think somebody in the hammocking community actually kind of almost came up with the concept of these, and that's what they're generally known as. The name escapes me at the moment, you'll excuse me. But this is to kind of help cocoon those slack areas over you, keep them taut to prevent things or you falling out of them. I see the concept, it's still, I'm not entirely sure how bad it would be if these weren't there, to be really, really honest. But yeah, I guess if enough people are talking about them and using them, and they've made it into mainstream hammocks, then there must be a use case. And of course I've got the, I hope, yeah, you can see that. I've got the guy line here. The guy line. I imagine that was just for your admin, for hanging stuff up, and you can see here I've hung the actual hammock storage bag itself. But I'm also led to believe, from watching a number of YouTube videos, there's a structural purpose for this, and it helps you to have an equal hang at either end. Again, I can't see how that occurs from an engineering perspective, but I'm not an engineer, so don't take my word for it. But again, there's enough of them in circulation for me to think now that they serve a purpose. If it helps the hammock to hang equally, brilliant. But of course, just from a day-to-day purpose, you've got a nice convenient gear line there to stow whatever I would normally stow if I was under a tarp. Then I could stow it on there. Speaking of tarps, I was going to put a tarp over this today, but I think I'm going to leave that for another occasion. I possibly would. I was going to say I don't think I'd ever sleep out overnight just in this, but actually I might, if it was a very warm, dry summer's evening, I might do that. I think a lot of the time, even if it was dry, you can still suffer from dew in the morning. I'd probably rig a tarp up over the top of this traditional A-type frame tarp like you're used to seeing me put up. I'd probably rig that over the top of this, but not today. Today is just going to be about playing around and experimenting with the hammock hang itself, figuring out what's the least amount of kit that I need to bring out with me to affect what I've done today. And I think it's going to be what I've got with me today. The 2 lengths of tape was 1 length of tape at the beginning of the day, now 2 lengths of tape and the 2 carabiners, and of course the hammock. I think that's the minimum I'll get away with. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some thinking to do. As always, I've got with me my Swear by My Beaver Bushcraft sharpening kit. I've got my diamond stone, I guess, there, 1000 and 180, coarse and fine. I've got the diamond lapping fluid. I really wish these worked well without putting diamond lapping fluid on it. You could put water on them, but that will then rust the bottom of how the diamond is embedded on this and can cause it to corrode. So you could use water, but there's a long-term damage, which means that diamond lapping fluid is the best thing. I just don't like carrying it because it's something else to carry. It's, you know, and I'd rather not carry it if I don't have to. And then we've got my small strop there to finish off. So I'm just going to spend a few moments now just checking over the edge of my Mora Garberg carbon, just seeing if it needs a little bit of TLC and applying it if it does. I should imagine at the very least it's going to need is a strop, just because I've been using it quite a lot in the last couple of weeks. So I'm just noticing, and it's really on the edge. I'm just noticing a couple of spots of light reflecting towards the tip of the blade, and a few right down near the handle. The vast majority of the blade seems in very, very good order. Just the top and bottom needs a bit of TLC. Probably going to start with the strop and actually see if I can get it back to condition by using the least amount, or causing the least amount of damage to the blade by stropping it. If I can't, then I'll start off with the fine 1000 grit side of that stone. There we have it, folks, back to condition. I've spent a good amount of time just keep moving my body position just to make sure that I've not missed any, I'm not casting any shadow on this knife edge, I'm not missing any flat spots, and from tip to toe it looks in very good condition indeed, and I haven't had to go anywhere near it with the actual sharpening stone, so I've not taken any metal from this. I've just refined and stropped that edge with a preloaded strop that I brought out. Time well spent. Go get the mug. Now we're going to dump the bowl quicker then. And very carefully, and then as this flames come out here, put that on the top there, so it balances well. Brilliant. Here we are, we've made it to the end of the day. What did I want to get out of the day? I wanted to play around and experiment with my new hammock, and I've done that. Learnt lots already, still lots to learn, and I'm looking forward to trying it out for real, if you like, doing an overnighter in it sometime in the near future. So that was good. Utilised some knife maintenance, or did some knife maintenance. Not a great deal needed, less than I thought there would be. And it was also interesting to see that Gypsy well, how it had dropped in volume from when I was last here. However, the water appeared much clearer. And interestingly, after I'd filled that millbank bag up that you saw me do earlier in the video, I went back to it and it had filled up, not to the top, but it had certainly filled up. So clearly there is a water table there. And it quite quickly filled itself back up to the level of that water table. It's just that water table was much lower than it was last time I was here. So it filled itself up relatively quickly after I'd filled that millbank bag up, which led to us filtering the Gypsy well water through the millbank bag, resulting in where we are now, which is you enjoying a lovely
hot chocolate.
And it's nice.
Well, I haven't really tasted it yet because it might be too hot.
Bit concerned it's a bit too hot. I got things the wrong way round. I was so focused on getting Evie set up and getting my hammock set up that I forgot to start the water filtering process. So the last thing we got to today was filtering the water, and as you know from previous videos, it takes a long time to filter. So I'd like to say lesson learned, but I've learned.
This is quite nice.
Quite nice. Oh, good. So lesson learned again, to start the watering filtering process much earlier in the day. But I think you can excuse me for today because obviously I've had my hands full with Evie, I've had my hands full with my hammock, and I've had my hands full with this monster here today, haven't I? Hey, beard trim, you've really run me ragged, and the amount of times I've had to stop you trying to jump in the hammock, I've lost count of how many times, but that's enough. Oh, you're going? Okay, bye then. Camera shy, she's off. So, I got everything I wanted to do out of the day. What about yourself?
I got to make a hot chocolate like I said, which was my third option. I got to kind of make the hammock and I got to feed in it and go in it. And then and that's it.
You spent quite a bit of time in the chair, didn't you?
Yeah, there's a chair over there that Dad's made. And I've also been playing with Willow and going over to the lake with her, where she gets very wet.
Everybody's happy. You'll have seen Evie earlier on in the video sat in the chair that I made the last time I was in this area. And I secreted the tripod behind a tree over there, and it was just a case of redeploying the legs, putting the fabric back in, which I carry around with me, and we had a nice comfy chair for the afternoon. All in all, a successful day out. Thank you, as always, for joining me and these two out in the woods. If you enjoyed the video, please do click on that subscribe button and the bell so that you don't miss any future notifications. If you think there's anyone in your network that would enjoy watching the video, like, share, all of the usual good stuff. It's a goodbye from me, and it's a
goodbye from Evie.
see you later, folks. Bye.